welcome back to another episode of Penelope Draws Manga. This year, 2022, will be the 4th year that I draw my modern Cupid. The reason that I've been doing this every year is because I use it to map my improvement over the past year, and this will be the 4th time that I've done it. Just to be clear though, this is not a redraw. None of my 4 pictures of Cupid so far have been a redraw. It's just a redrawing of the same character, not the same picture, to see how much I've improved in a year. Like the first time I redrew the character, I had him in a different position than the first year that I did it. The first year that I did it, I had just started drawing people not very long ago, and so I wasn't very confident. I just drew him kind of standing there. I even mapped out the proportions with boxes, and generally just kind of didn't know what I was doing, especially with the face. Here's that original picture for you. I think you can see how much I've improved since then. It was also only the second picture I ever drew using Procreate or any digital software in general. I super loved that picture when I made it, although looking back now, I can just see all of the bad stuff that I did in it. I didn't even know about multiply or add or any of the layer effects to make it look nice. I just kind of winged it. This year is actually the first year I've ever drawn Cupid in a scene with somebody else before. Up until this year, every picture I've done of Cupid has been just him standing in a blank pink space, kind of like you saw in the first image that I showed you. But this year I decided to draw him in a scene with a friend of mine from college. I drew them sitting on a bench in the middle of a park. It's not really winter in this scene since I have some sakura trees blooming in the background. You'll see those when I start coloring them. But they were so pink and pretty, I thought they'd be good for Valentine's Day, even if it's not really Valentine's Day weather. But you know what? They look nice, so I don't really care. Also, I've never drawn a park bench before. It was super fun trying to think of the slats and the 3D curving space. I would definitely draw it again. Now that I've got the poses and bench in place, it's time to move on to the finer details. Like usual, I don't really use smooth line art. I've never used smooth line art for Cupid, and actually the first 2 didn't have any line art at all. Originally, I wanted Cupid to have this very, almost realistic feel, which is why I tried to not use line art. But by the time I had gotten to my 3rd picture, I really felt like I had discovered my style, quote unquote, so I went with a messy line art type. I really still love how it turned out, and I don't feel like this picture quite measured up to it, but I'm pretty happy with it nonetheless. Funny story about last year's picture, actually. I was feeling really uninspired, and it was only 2 days until Valentine's Day, and I didn't have any ideas of what I was going to draw for that picture. So on February 12th, I just started a new canvas to see what would happen. It was about 8 o'clock, and somehow in there I started feeling really inspired. And probably around 11-ish, I was feeling like, okay, I really should go to bed, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. So at 11 o'clock at night, I was still working on this drawing. A lot of you are probably thinking, oh, 11 o'clock, that's not really that late. But it was kind of late for me at the time, and I kept trying to put the canvas down. I was like, no, I can't finish this, it's too late. I ended up not being able to sleep, and then it was 3 o'clock in the morning when I finally finished it. I was so sleepy the next day, but I was so happy that I had kept going because I absolutely loved that picture, and I still do to this day. I kind of feel the need to explain what's going on in this picture. Cupid and my friend are not on a Valentine's Day date, although I guess it kind of looks like that. My friend's birthday is actually on Valentine's Day, so I decided to add her in this picture, kind of as her birthday present. So friend, if you're watching this video, here's a great big happy birthday for you. I know it's a little bit belated, but I hope that you like this picture. I had a lot of fun working on it and trying something new, so thank you. Now I'm working on Cupid's wings. I have a love-hate relationship with drawing wings, mostly because I have a lot of characters that have wings. Most of these I created before I started drawing, so I kind of cut myself a little slack. However, I definitely shot myself in the foot with Cupid since I didn't create this version of Cupid until I started drawing people. But then again, Cupid isn't originally my character, just this version of him is mine. So I guess I can't take all the credit for making annoying wings. Now that I've got my messy line art in place, I'm going to move on to the color. For Cupid himself, I've actually used the same color palette that I created 4 years ago now, and I'm kind of realizing they're pretty saturated, but I still can't really change them. That's just how Cupid looks. When I first created him, I didn't use any references, really. I just kind of made him as general looking an army type character as I could. I don't really know how accurate I am. I didn't use any references when I made him, and I must admit I haven't used any since. Initially I wanted to give him camouflage, but back when I was starting off drawing, I couldn't really make camouflage very well, so he just has this kind of tan and green uniform. I think it looks kind of okay. For my friend's clothes and color palette, I had to just make something up because I've never drawn her before, and frankly I don't really know what kind of clothes she has, so I just thought, this looks good enough. So I hope that there's something she would actually wear. I just made something that I thought looks nice. I just didn't want it to be something that was casual. Because you know what? Regular old sweatpants and a t-shirt just really aren't that interesting to draw. But those ruffles and a bow thing, they were pretty fun. The pants are just modeled on some pants that I have in real life, and I took a pretty okay guess at the shoes, I think. You might have noticed that I completely skipped over the background process. This is because out of everything that I drew, this took me the most time. And frankly, I didn't want to go through all that footage, and I was pretty sure you wouldn't want to see all of it either, so I just took the recording that Procreate makes, and I have it displayed here for you, just so that you could get a quick look of what I was doing for it. When it came to the trees, I really didn't know what I was doing, same with the water, but I think they turned out alright in the end. One thing I did want to show you guys a closer look at was how I drew the stone path. All I really did was make these crack-like shapes across where I wanted the path to be, smoothed out the edges so that the pieces of rock didn't quite fit in with each other. The way I initially drew them, they didn't look quite like they were in perspective, so I selected them and then kind of squished them down and added more at the bottom. It was the shading though that really made them look like rocks. I covered the entire area with a multiply layer and then erased in the middle of the stones where the light would be hitting it most strongly, because the stones kind of curve a little at the edges, so adding this very light type of shading made it have a more 3D feel. Then I went in with a slightly darker color and put in the joints between the rocks, as well as where the rocks like bump alongside each other. Finally, I added a lighter color to the top of them and the stones were finished. Like I mentioned earlier, I didn't really know what I was doing when I was making the trees, but I thought it would be interesting for you to see the process. I just started by filling in the areas that I knew would be dark, like inside the tree or behind one of the other trees. I mostly used the shading to differentiate one tree from another. And as I went on, I began to figure out how to make these round, fluffy, circular shapes that are pieces of leaves or sakura flowers or I don't know, whatever this pink cotton candy stuff is. It really does look like cotton candy. Even as I was painting it, I was realizing, wow, this looks more like cotton candy than an actual tree. Next, I'm going to add some shading to our characters in the foreground. This is where I started to run into some problems. Because of the size of the canvas I was using, I had to keep merging layers, and sometimes in Procreate when you merge layers, especially layers set to add for some reason, it can completely change the way that the image looks. This was something that I was running into a lot with my short animated music video. Every cell was on the same layer, so I had to keep merging them. This is what ended up happening in some of the frames, but I was on a time crunch and couldn't figure out how to fix it, so I ended up just having to leave it, even though it ended up looking really kind of strange. Fortunately, I didn't really run into any of those problems in this project, although it definitely could have happened. As I looked at the picture towards the end, I realized that I'd forgotten Cupid's signature single diamond earring, so I added that here at the end. And here is the final finished result. I really ended up liking it a lot, maybe not as much as the previous years, but I think it definitely showcased how much better I've gotten in a year. Oh yeah, and here's the second version of Cupid that I drew, since I didn't find a place to put it anywhere else in the video. I hope that you enjoyed watching this video as much as I enjoyed making it, and I hope that you have a fantastic day. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye!